My absolute favorite feeling in Albion PvP is the feeling that I'm getting better when I succeed in doing something I previously wasn't able to. And I'm going to share with you 10 methods that you can apply to your game in order to get better and start enjoying PvP more and more. Some of these are mindsets that you can apply to your game, some of these are things that you can do, and all of the methods we're going to discuss are really simple. The tricky part is that in order to really get good, you have to kind of apply them over a longer period of time. But you can start doing it this week already and feel the results very quick, and then if you do it over a longer period of time, you will probably get really good and do whatever you want in Albion PvP. Let's go! Method number 1 is to stop bitching while you play. I'm sure this is not what you expected, so let me explain. In fact, I have some pretty good news for you. You are one big and efficient getting better machine. You can't really stop your brain from learning, and it is already very good at it. And this applies to everything, including Albion Online PvP. If you go out there and play and put yourself in PvP situations, you will get better. Absolutely no doubt. Especially considering that in Albion Online, knowledge and experience plays a comparatively bigger role than mechanical skill, comparing to other games. However, while you cannot stop yourself from learning, you can significantly slow down your progress. And the main way that I see people do this in Albion is by putting their focus and energy on things that they cannot change. And I absolutely get it. There are a lot of problems with the game. It's very easy to get frustrated. There are rats, there are raider users, there are bots, there are always some sort of issues with balance in the content that you prefer. There are double-bladed players, there are fights that are unfair, there are all kinds of bugs and glitches. We can list things forever. But this is true for every single game. And even more so, it's also true for real-life sports and pretty much anything you can come up with. There are NBA players that go on podcasts to talk about how annoyed they are about flopping or foul baiting in the game. And your concerns and frustrations with Albion PvP are most likely actually very legit. And I don't just mean it in the sense that all your feelings are valid, meditate until you have 8.4. I mean that you actually pinpoint real objective problems when you play, I'm absolutely sure. But one thing you can do to start getting better faster and start winning more fights in Albion PvP is to separate your bitching time from your playing time. The moment you enter the mists or roads or ZVZ, it's game time. It is time to put away all the problems, accept reality as it is, and focus on what you are doing and what you have control over. This has well-documented benefits to performance, which is of course great, but even more interestingly for us in the context of today, or this video, is that this also improves our ability to learn and to change, which is essentially what you need to do in order to get better in PvP or anything else. So in conclusion, if you want to take full advantage of the supercomputer that is your brain, then turn off your complaining side while you are playing. And later, when you are no longer in a PvP environment, then of course feel free to talk about your frustrations and feedback in forums, Reddit, Discord, friends, whatever you have. Method number 2 to get better at PvP fast is to use other players. I will teach you how to actually use others to get better, because there's a big and very common mistake that I see a lot of newer and intermediate players make. But I want to quickly clear out that by using other players, I don't mean abusing anybody. I mean having other people that you can cooperate with in order to get better. And remember that this is coming from a solo player. I play 90% of my time alone and I enjoy it that way. And I am definitely not saying that you need to do group content if you don't enjoy it. That is not the point. But if you are a beginner or an intermediate player, I very strongly suggest that if you want to get better fast, you join communities. If you are serious about getting good, you need to have some more experienced players that you can talk to that are in your circle. You don't need to play content together, but just that you have some access to. And the two best ways to find those people is to either join a guild or join a Discord community. I know I should make a Discord, and in the near future I'm certain that I will. And maybe if you're listening to this in the future, then I already have made it, so join. But for now, there are lots of great creator communities that will be happy to have you, and there are a lot of guilds that can fulfill this role that we're looking for in order to get better. I hope that you are able to avoid the potato farm guilds which just abuse newer players, as well as those full tryhard ZVZ guilds, and that you find something in between where there are people who just enjoy playing together, or even if they're doing solo content, in talking to each other, sharing clips and achievements and all that. But now the juicy part. If you have access to some more experienced players, there is a correct way to get help and an incorrect way. And this is a very common mistake that I see. Stop asking general questions. You are wasting your own time as well as the time of the person that is helping you. The more specific you are, the more value you both will get from the interaction. And by far the absolute best way to get better through the help of others is to ask them to review and analyze specific fights or PvP situations together. If you found the best player in the whole world and ask them some general question like how do I play crossbow, you will get 50 times less value than if you were to find an average player and just get their attention and help in analyzing a recording of a fight where you died. And it's not only that being specific is more valuable and more efficient in order to get better, but asking general questions can actually be harmful. Albion PvP is wonderfully complex, and there's a lot of room for all kinds of builds, matchups and personal playstyles. And if you put a lot of pressure on somebody to give you some sort of general answers or general guidelines, they might give you the wrong ones or give you incorrect information. This is because most experienced and very good players are still not very good at everything. They have some builds or some specific playstyles that they excel at, and then there's some others which they understand enough, but if you pressure them to give some sort of theory, they might come up with a wrong one. On the other hand, if you took that same person and you showed them a fight, I'm very certain that that person would be able to pinpoint the mistakes in the fight and would give you much more valuable info and something that you can use to get better yourself. And so finally, if you do have access to an experienced player but you don't have a chance to show them a clip of your fight, then at the very least try to ask questions that are specific and relevant to builds that that person has played for a long time. Method number 3 is to record your fights. You know, I like to think that I put a lot of extremely useful methods and mindsets into this video to help you get better. But if we're really honest, at the end of the day, if there is one single thing that you take away from this that will have probably the biggest impact on how fast you progress in Albion Online PvP, it's simply recording your own fights. Step 1 is to just record. I have used Windows Game Bar and OBS Replay Buffer, and both for me were simple and very effective. In both of those, you can set it up to constantly record in the background, and if something interesting happens, you can easily save the last 5 minutes of your gameplay. 99% of your PvP situations will last less than 5 minutes. And if you don't feel like rewatching your fight, then don't. You don't have to. Start by just recording. I can tell you from my experience that even if you don't want to rewatch it right away, maybe you are tilted because you died or just tired or whatever, it might still turn out to be really valuable later on. However, if you want to go further, then step 2 after you've recorded your fight is to watch it. No real pressure, no specific goal, just have a look at the fight and, well, move on with your life. See what you notice in the fight, if there's something that you didn't realize while it was happening, and then move on. And finally, step 3 is to review your fight and analyze it yourself. If you died, try to figure out what went wrong, what was the mistake. If your enemy died, then try to figure out what kind of mistakes they did. The way that I really like to do this is to imagine like I'm coaching one of the players, either myself or my opponent, and then try to pinpoint the biggest mistakes that I can find. I find that if I'm imagining like I'm giving somebody advice that was in the fight, then it's easier for me to remember the lessons. But you might figure out a better or more structured approach for yourself. By the way, feel free to share. I'd be happy to know about this in the comments. But for now, let's move on to method number 4. And number 4 is stop running away. Whether you are making an omelette, or solving the eternal mysteries of the universe, or learning Albion PvP, you need to break a few eggs. There is no way around it. And so if you want to get good faster, to get more out of the time that you spend in Albion, then stop running away. You must take risks and even get into unfavorable fights. If you spend 100 hours in the mists, always running from every other player that might be dangerous, you will learn very little in these 100 hours. As you might know, I play a lot of tier 7 in the mists, and that means I constantly come across players who have a very good chance to kill me, or at least fight back and potentially disengage later if the fight doesn't go well for them. But instead, they simply run. Sometimes successfully, oftentimes they still end up dying, but one thing is sure, they get no valuable lessons or experience from those situations. I can guarantee you that if those same players just fought back, even if they died as a result, they would get better much quicker. If you know you have no chance to win, of course you don't have to take the fight, but I strongly suggest that you take all the risky fights where you don't know what will happen. Maybe you don't know the matchup or you're just not sure how it will go. Go and try it out. There is one big and common misunderstanding around this topic that I want to explain, and then we will move on. Many people feel that you need to first learn how to survive and only then you can learn or you can move on to learning PvP. This is somewhat true. I have a separate guide on surviving the mists, and even I mentioned this idea there that most of us learn survival before PvP. But the big misconception is that you can get better at surviving by simply running away and surviving. And that's not entirely true. I mean, you can get better at surviving, but your survival skills will improve much faster if you actually take fights. This is because the biggest skill to survive is to be aware of your surroundings, to be able to adapt without panic and evaluate the situation that you're in and the opponents around you. And all of this comes directly from active PvP experience, not from running away experience. So even if your end goal is to first get better at surviving in the mists or in the roads of Avalon, then I suggest that you still take fights and you still put yourself in those risky situations to develop all the basic skills of Albion PvP. And if you're thinking that, well, this doesn't seem like a very good financial decision, then hold on to that thought. Remember this, because we will come back to this in a couple minutes. For now, let's move on. Method number 5 is to play a different weapon or a different build for an hour. Whether you are a beginner, an intermediate player, or even an advanced player, I can guarantee that you are currently underestimating the impact that knowing your enemy's build has on your PvP success. Not your build, but your enemy's build. Do you know that quote, "I fear not the man who knows 10,000 kicks, but the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times"? Well, that quote was actually before Bruce Lee started playing solo mists. In Albion Online PvP, it is a bit different. You shouldn't be as scared of someone who's played thousands of hours of their specific build, but much more scared of someone who has played thousands of hours of your build. No matter what build they are using against you, the fact that they have played your build means that they will be in your head. They will know how you think, they will know what you want to do and what your cooldowns and cost ranges are, and it will be so much easier for them to outplay you. I'm not scared of one-trick ponies in the mists, I'm not scared of meta builds, but I am scared of strong players who have played a lot of one-handed spear, because if they fight against me, they have a much better chance of being one step ahead of me. And so my suggestion to you is, play a different weapon or a different build for at least an hour. Of course, the longer, the bigger the impact will be, but start with a short time. This approach will give you a massive boost with medium or even low effort. You don't need to dedicate your life to playing every single weapon, Just pick some popular build that you haven't played and play it for a little while. And honestly, you don't even have to force high caliber PvP. Even if you just go out and kill mobs and farm it up a little bit, you will already receive some of the benefit of getting to know that build better. And especially if you are struggling with some specific builds in the mists, go play those builds for a little while. Here's a quick funny example of what can happen if someone has full specs in Death Givers but has never seen Spear Deflecting Spin W. Method number 6 is to start seeing PvP as an investment. The last two methods that we discussed, taking more risks and playing different weapons, are both pretty sure ways to lower your profits short term. In fact, you might have heard some advice from me already in other videos that might make you less money short term for the sake of improving and becoming more profitable long term. And this is because if you want to get good at PvP, then PvP for you should be an investment. And this means a couple of things. Number one, it's just like all the other parts of the game. You don't really expect to make big profits right away. If you want to level up cooking in Albion, for example, you're likely to expect that you're going to put a lot of money in and start making big profits much later down the line. But much more importantly, this means that you should stop measuring your PvP success in how much silver you made today or this week. If you want to really get better at Albion Online PvP, then you should start expecting to either lose money or at least make small or moderate profits on it, and not compare yourself or track your success in how much money you made, or compare yourself to the kind of profits that a lot of content creators will highlight in their content. Remember that all those guys who focus on making silver in their YouTube videos or Twitch streams have already gone through this learning curve and become very good players, and are now enjoying the benefits of all this experience and focusing more on silver or other fun activities in the game. Getting better at PvP and making a lot of silver in PvP are two things which are kind of at odds with each other. I suggest that you consciously focus on one or the other, and if your goal is to get better, then expect to spend money on PvP right now. And don't use your silver profits as a measure of how successful you are if you want to learn. If your goal is to get good at PvP, then dying a lot and losing millions of silver is not failure. Nothing is wrong with you. I've seen a lot of people write to their favorite content creators or in communities on Discords or Reddit that they are doing their best and they're going into the mists and they keep dying. And usually after that they ask something like, what should I do, or what am I doing wrong? But if you have those kinds of thoughts, then consider that maybe you are not actually failing. Maybe this is the way and you are succeeding and you're on your way to becoming good. You just aren't profitable yet, and that's okay. So if you want to get better at PvP, start treating it as an investment and expect to make little or no profit for the period while you are focused on learning. Method number 7 is to learn the spells. This sounds simple, but there's actually a bit more to it. First of all, there are so many spells in Albion Online because there's so many different weapons that inevitably you're not gonna know all the details of all the spells, and that's fine. But I very strongly suggest that you try to learn most of the spells of the common weapons and builds that you see in whatever content that you play. And in my experience, it's important to not only learn and understand the essence of a spell, which spell gives mobility, which spell roots, slows, does damage, and all those things. That's of course important, but in my opinion, two extra things on top of that which have helped me greatly in becoming better in PvP myself are learning the cooldowns and cast ranges of the spells that I most commonly go up against in the mists. So remember, for every spell that is commonly used against you, you want to know what that spell does, what is its cooldown, and what is the cast range. There are two general ways to go about learning the spells in Albion Online. And this reminds me of when I was in university and played a lot of board games with some of my friends. I noticed that there were always two types of people. There were those that were obsessed with learning all the rules of a new board game that we were about to play, and it was fine for them to spend an hour learning to make sure that they understand and know all the options that they will have in the game, what does what is allowed, who goes when, and all those things. And then there was the second type of person who could not possibly be bothered with spending so much time and just wanted to get the game going because they knew that they will learn, and they were perfectly happy with not knowing everything at the start, but they were wanting to learn it as it goes, as different rules or situations become relevant in the game. Then they would be happy to open the rulebook and learn what to do next, or what is allowed, or what happens now. And both of those are very legit. So if you prefer to learn more theoretically in advance, open the Destiny board and start reading spells. If you are like me and you prefer to learn more as you go, then what I suggest you do, and what I still do today, for example, 2 days ago, I learned new things about the Hellspawn staff after I died to it. So what I suggest that you do is, after you take a fight, especially if you die to a build or a weapon, but even if you win or if it's a close fight, afterwards, when you're either reviewing the fight or you just look at the kill and look at your opponent's build, then open the weapon and open the spell and read what it does, if you're not sure, and also remember cooldowns and cast ranges. I use this method myself, and as I just mentioned, I'm still learning. There are still spells, there are still details that I really don't know, and usually learn about only after I make a mistake and die, or almost die, to something that I did not fully expect. Method number 8 is to cut back on non-lethal content. Now, first of all, I believe that having fun is still the most important value, so if you are enjoying anything at all in Albion Online, just do it, just have fun with whatever you want. But if you are focused on getting better at PvP and you want to get there as quickly as possible, then I suggest that you limit yourself to almost no non-lethal content, or very little of it. We are talking here about yellow zones, as well as non-lethal corrupted dungeons, non-lethal hell gates, 5v5 arena, and all the content in the game where you do not lose your things. For a couple of years I played chess competitively, and even though I myself was above average but not amazing, a lot of the guys that I trained with were really good and actually got very high competitive results. And one thing that happened during trainings is that we often wanted to play all kinds of chess variants, which is essentially chess but with all kinds of fun extra rules. If you are a chess player yourself, then the games I'm referring to are Bug House and Crazy House. Anyway, at some point our coach, who was really good and competitive as well, forbid us from playing those games during practice or during the chess camp or whatever we had. And for a while we thought that this because we are wasting time, that we could be working on our game or doing something useful. But after we talked to him about it and it became more and more clear, he actually didn't mind that we were wasting time. In fact, he was happy that we were doing all kinds of other things, but he specifically told us not to play those because of how close they were to real chess, and how he was convinced over his years of experience as a coach that it will mess with our intuition in real chess, because we will get too used to these not really chess but kind of close situations. The point of this story is that non-lethal PvP in Albion Online functions somewhat similarly. People play non-lethal PvP completely differently from full loot PvP. The spells are the same, but that's about it. If you get too used to non-lethal content, it can start messing with your intuition and your reflexes in lethal PvP. So if you want to get better at real PvP in Albion Online, of course, use the yellow zones and even duels just to learn what different spells do and what they look like, and maybe those cooldowns and cast ranges that we talked about earlier. But I suggest that as soon as possible, you move on from that and make sure that your primary training ground is the actual type of PvP that you are learning to get better for. Method number 9 is to lean into the sandbox. Albion Online is a sandbox MMO and you are absolutely free to do anything you want. I mean, you are also free to do anything you want in life, but the Albion Online type of environment really gives you no win condition. So it's up to you what you want to do, and the important thing is that you do not owe anybody anything. You don't have to play any certain way, you don't have to take fights that you don't want to, you can play a weapon that somebody else doesn't like, you can play a playstyle, you can rat, you can do absolutely anything you want, and feel free to do it. Of course, within the limits of what the developers of the game have allowed with the rules. The reason I say this is that if you do not play the game in a way that feels fun to you personally, then you will probably never become really good at PvP. And the reason for that is because the learning curve is kind of frustrating and hard, and it takes a bit of time, and that's inevitable, and really that's the kind of game that I think we all want. In fact, pretty much all successful competitive games are difficult and complex, and that's what makes it fun. But it also means that you will never feel like sticking through it and actually get better in long term if you're not doing it in a way that makes the process itself fun for you. And this all brings us to method number 10 to become good at Albion Online PvP. This is for you if you are an intermediate or an advanced player. And the method is teaching somebody else. I cannot overstate how incredibly powerful this method is. Be willing to be the person that others can learn from and get help from. Be the guy who reviews clips of PvP fights, who answers questions, and who helps other players understand and get better from the experience that you already have got from your Albion PvP situations. And I'm not suggesting that you do this for good karma or, you know, to feel good that you've helped someone, although maybe those things will happen as well, but I am purely saying this as one of the most powerful ways to become better at PvP yourself. When you explain something to somebody else, you are forced to break it down and explain it to yourself first. This process requires you to put your intuition and experience into words and to make it clear for yourself and for the other person. There are things about the one-handed spear that I was very clearly doing for a long time, intuitively, based on my own previous lessons and deaths and mistakes, but I did not fully realize why I was doing it before I started teaching others how to play it. And not only does it help you understand the things you already know about PvP, about your build, about matchups and so on, but it will also help you very quickly identify the gaps that you have in your knowledge. I can pretty much guarantee that if you find someone less experienced than you and review some of their fights together with them, you will very quickly find out things that you don't really know, that you don't know the answers to, or you don't fully understand in the fights that you're looking at. And you will progress and become an experienced and successful PvP player much faster. The fact that you're here tells me that you absolutely need to like this video. I love getting new ideas and learning from the experience of others, so if you have figured out some methods to get better at PvP that work for you, that I did not touch upon, please be so kind and share it in the comments so that I and also in the future potentially others could also benefit from whatever you have figured works for you. And finally, since it's kind of hard to do all these 10 things at once, I suggest that you pick a couple and think about them and maybe focus on them for a while and come back to this video later for more ideas, for more things to apply to your PvP game. Don't forget to have fun in PvP and in life, and enjoy the absolutely amazing feeling of becoming better at something. Have a lovely day and goodbye for now.